Action. Action,
All right.
action.
Cool. So welcome everyone to the first, probably only little discussion on flow state and rewilding. I've invited Mark Wildman from LA to co-facilitate. Super stoked to have his presence. And I do have a rough outline in which I will share. So I'll send you guys a PDF of the notes. Feel free to take notes if anything stands out to you or is inspiring to you. We'd love to just, give you guys information, give you guys inspiration to kind of stay sane during this crazy time and just give you a time to connect and chat with us. Feel free to ask questions in the chat bar and the chat box as we're going too. But I want to start with just why I felt called to hold this discussion on rewilding and flow state. So eating food with our fellow humans. I have about 12 coaches I share space with here at the Flowshala. As you can see, I'm actually living in the downstairs of the Flowshala right now, just so I can cut the difference between commute time, because I live in an intentional community with like 15 people, and I had to kind of bear down, buckle down, and be here. And I was making lunch the other day, and I was like, man, this really sucks. I can't eat with Elise. I can't eat with my friends. And then I was like, had this instant idea of like, well, I could eat with a bunch of people that I normally wouldn't get to eat with, and that's cool. So I'm trying to find the positive in the situation. So that was kind of initially what sparked this idea. And then so I called up Mark, and me and Mark ended up having a virtual lunch together and chatting about stuff. And then, yeah, he agreed to do it. So thanks, Mark.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on this weird medium of virtual lunch?
Well, I don't know, it's kind of fun. It's almost like being around people, but not. And I get to stay here on my couch and drink out of my old glass jars, which I also find super hip.
Great.
Also, I get to eat as much bacon as I want during the course of this hour, and I got half a pound in the oven right now, which I find to be just a huge thumbs up.
That's great. I tend to eat a lot of bacon here at the Flowshala too. My partner likes to eat a lot of bacon, so we've been doing a lot of bacon. No disrespect to our plant eater friends out there.
Yeah, I like to eat my plant through my animals.
Wild animals, of course. So I would love to open up for all you guys. What do you want to gain out of this discussion? What are you here for? Quick and dirty, one sentence style popcorn. Just like raise your hand so that it's not everyone talking all at once. Just give me a raise your hand and then unmute yourself and go. I'll kind of facilitate and call the people I see whose hands are here. Why'd you show up? Don't all jump at once.
Came to see you guys' beautiful faces and say hi.
Yay, hi.
Oh, there she is down there.
Howdy, Mark.
She's on Summer. She got Summer as a name instead of Elise.
I
should change that.
We share Zoom. Yeah. What else? Let's hear from like 5 people before we move on to the next thing. What do you guys want? What do you guys want to know? What are you here for? What drew you to like hearing the words rewilding and flow state? Like what triggered your curiosity to show up and be in this little Zoom space? Sander, tell us.
Yeah, I just want to get a little bit more clear-cut language on training with unconventional tools, bearing loads, and really like get a better, clear vision of like what it means to tap into flow state, like access it during your training and train within that paradigm.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Sander. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Hear from 4 more brave Zoomers.
Amina, start talking.
I'm having lunch. You told me it's a lunch meeting.
All right. You be quiet then, Amina.
That's the whole purpose. We did actually want to have lunch with our friends, and that is a great intention. All right, 3 more guys. Quick and dirty. The quicker we get through this, the quicker we can talk about the good stuff. Dana.
Neuroplasticity really revs my engine.
It revs your engine?
Yeah.
Neuroplasticity?
Yeah. I like doing science, so I'm tuning in to learn some stuff.
Okay.
Sweet. And Dana, I do believe you were at Mark's workshop, the first Flow State Summit, right?
Yes, the first one.
Okay.
Is that the one with the machetes and the sticks?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be referencing a screen share at some point in this, no spoiler alert, but I might be throwing a little screen share of that in there so we can get some visual stimuli. All right, let's hear from 2 more brand new guys. I'm just gonna call on people and you gotta share, so get ready, guys. That's how it goes in our Zoom calls. Let's see here, Charlie, why are you here, bud?
Or Charlie.
To learn something new.
Learn something new, awesome. Sienna.
I am curious about the term rewilding yourself when we're supposed to stay indoors and social distancing. And also, how does that apply to being inside? And then also flow state when you are stopping yourself from going out into the world and the flow of like being in position in. So just curious about how to apply that outside of the actual exercise terms, but
Cool.
where we're at right now.
Yes, like how do we still maintain a flow state when this environment that we are currently in is extremely unnatural? And that is a great segue into our opening. Cool. Let's definitely bookmark that because I do have some good feedback on that. Cool. Thanks, Sienna. And Kimberly, why are you here? Unmute bottom left.
I don't have a great answer for this. I saw flow state and I was like, I need to understand that better. So that's why I'm here.
That's
All
good
right,
enough.
I think that this means that Summer should give us all a little intro on flow states.
Sure, I'll just skip right past the first half of my presentation. Go straight to flow state. So yeah, flow state, obviously I'm pretty passionate about it. I started a facility called Flowshala 2 years ago. I've been teaching seminars on this stuff for the past 8 to 10 years. And flow state is a really healing space for humans to be in that state of mind. It's actually like a very specific brainwave state. So when we're in a stress response, we're in fight or flight. We are generally tapping into like the fear response or the reptilian brain. We just tend to spend a lot of time in our beta brainwave state, which can be highly associated with prefrontal cortex. So that's the front brain here. So if you're ever kind of like furrowing your brow and thinking and doing analytical thinking or like thinking into the future, you're likely in a beta brainwave state. When you're in a state of flow, you have what's called hypofrontality. So you turn off the prefrontal cortex momentarily so that you can tap into multiple networks of the brain all at once synergistically. So essentially it allows you to make really complex decisions really, really quickly with ease. Thumbs up if that resonated with you, flow state. So how the heck do we get there, especially when we're in this state of fight or flight all the time because we're just indoors, we can't connect with people, all the things that we normally would do, like go to the beach or go to the mountain and ride our bikes, we're like afraid to do because we're put in a stress response. Well, it's not a quick fix. I don't have all the answers, but we're gonna discuss it and we're gonna stimulate our brains because that's better than sitting on the interwebs and read more stories about coronavirus. Spirit fingers, if anything resonates with you, you can do spirit fingers or just like these fingers, whatever you want.
I'm doing this one. I'm not doing this one.
No, my peeps will probably do spirit fingers. Your people will do this. We can do this.
One.
Our peeps, we're all together.
Yeah.
We're all each other's peeps. Okay, so some working definitions. Anybody curious about rewilding? You probably heard that term floating around. There's a whole like big group of people that hold conferences on ancestral health. I would love to go to one of those at one point, but working definitions for today, rewilding means restoring ancestral ways of living that create greater health and well-being for humans and the ecosystems we belong to. Pretty straightforward. Many things lead to people to rewilding. Concern over ecological collapse or economic uncertainty, health problems, a nagging sense of something missing in life. So how does that relate to us in living and doing? So for me, I just jotted down a few notes. You'll have these to have for reference later on. But for me, in the living and doing category, living and doing, to coexist with nature, to be able to perform tasks with tools, not just Mace, but like tools like chopping wood, being able to do your work outside, like physical work, using your hands to plant and grow food, making shelter, making fire, getting dirty, swimming naked. That's another fun one. I live at a property where we have a floating dock and it's totally normal to just swim without clothes. And I feel weird when I have to put a bathing suit on, but that's just me. I know not everyone's there in that space and that's cool. Eating, so rewilding as it pertains to eating, consuming foods that are close to their natural state or foods that are nutrient dense versus nutrient depleted. Example, I just made this nice little bone broth jar right before this, and I'm going to share the recipe on that. Has a lot of collagen, super good for the brain. So consuming foods that are closest to their natural state, such as foraged mushrooms. Give me like a little, we'll just do these for Mark. Do you guys do foraging? Have you guys ever foraged mushrooms? Thumbs up if you foraged mushrooms before. They grow in nature. You can go find them. Let's see what else. Wild meat. Anybody hunters in the house for getting your own wild meat or purchasing it from a person that hunts? Yeah? Cool. Awesome. Love it. Let's see. Veggies from local farmers markets. Yeah, awesome. How about drinking gut health tonics derived from Ayurvedic recipes? Yeah, using turmeric and such.
And if you live in LA, it's kind of like a requirement.
What is the requirement?
To drink gut health things derived from Ayurvedic recipes.
Yeah, we're all being drawn to these ancestral ways because we realize that there's some sort of an imbalance and we need to kind of make up for that a bit. So right now, I've just noticed, like I said, it feels really unnatural for me to be separated from my fellow humans. I wanted to create this offering to be able to connect with you guys and discuss ideas and to inspire you guys to take small actions towards whatever your version of rewilding is. So I just listed a ton of my own personal examples, and we'll go into a bit more depth with our own sort of personal background. I want to introduce Mark Wildman, and he's going to share a bit on his experience with rewilding. And firstly, if you guys aren't familiar with Mark, Mark is a high-level coach. He trains with clubs and with Mace. He works with actors and actresses on set, both in Hollywood and around the world. And his job is to basically make actors and actresses who may have very little experience in fighting look extremely sexy doing it and not die.
Yeah.
That about sum it up? Cool.
Yes, my big focus is on making sure people don't die, which is actually pretty hard because most people don't actually have a large basis of not dying. I grew up in the middle of nowhere on a farm, so like we never had to rewild. We were already wild. But I find myself, the more I live in a city, the more you have to go back to wilding practices in order to keep yourself from going insane and becoming a city guy, when I just don't like the concept of being a city guy full time. But yes, so the tools that I use are kettlebells. Clubs are my two primary. I use maces a lot now as well because they're light and very easy to transport, and sandbags. And then, of course, I do a very large, complex, actually not that complex, system of fight training that I teach people in preparation for movies. But it's all just real stuff. We give you real machetes and we teach you to really block and really swing. And the movements aren't super complex, but we get really, 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 really good at the basics of turning around, not falling over, hitting things, moving forward, moving away, and responding in real time to actual threats. So I leave choreography to choreographers, and I do the wild part of all that stuff.
Hence the rewilding. I like it.
Yes.
Any friends who attended Mark's workshop at Flow State want to share their experience, specifically Lou, Xander, Dana, potentially Hannah, more pertaining to the getting whacked or getting a staff or a machete flying at your head? I think Roxanne might have been at that one. Elise, I know you rocked it. Oh, she already checked out. Quick, just feedback. What was it like for you attending that workshop and being given these tools? So if you guys want to imagine, I actually have some footage of that, which I'll pull up in a moment, but use your imagination for now. I'm just going to paint a little picture. So you're paired up with a partner. You've got this bamboo staff, day one. Your job is to learn to defend yourself. So Mark teaches you the basics. How do you defend yourself? You push the staff, which I have right here, up over the crown of your head to protect your skull so that the thing does not break your skull. You'd be surprised at how easy that is, but how awkward we do it when we're not trained to do it because we haven't mastered the basics. So
it's very hilarious when you start trying to teach people very basic things. The basic concepts, the kind of the core of rewilding is like, don't get hit and don't get hurt in my mind. And so I like to do this with weapons and swing a weapon at somebody's head in a slow, predictable way, and people will have a complete panic attack, even if they are a trained martial artist for the most part. People completely lose their mind in the simple idea of putting something between you and something else. People fall over, they step behind, they turn their body away. It's absolutely bonkers. What people will do instead of doing the simplest thing. And that's, I think that's pretty indicative of where we are as like a group, a society of people, is that something so simple as don't get hit is like a shocking and life-changing experience, you know?
I'm seeing a lot of metaphor, just looking at like the deeper kind of metaphorical behind this, because we are all freaking out because we are asked to be indoors, and we are freaking out because we don't have the tools to be able to keep our minds sane right now. Anybody that attended Mark's workshop, share your experience. Hey, Rashawn, how's it going? Great to see you.
Hey, if we could get Amina. We could get Amina. Hey, Amina, come back to your phone.
Amina, we want to see your face. Elise, how was it doing the workshop? What'd you learn?
It was natural. I don't know. I got really into it. I had a lot of like frustration going into it that I just needed to like focus on something. So it was very cathartic, and it felt pretty natural to me to like be in the state of like fighting someone and blocking. I definitely noticed a hyper focus, that state of awareness of all the surroundings.
So most people think that they're very, very aware of what they're doing in space, and most people are not very aware of what they're doing in space. So I like to do like a 5 or a 10-hour fight thing with everybody I train, because they're gonna figure out very simple things: how to walk, how to straighten out your arms, and how to not get hit. And if you can just get that far into a rewilding program, then I think you're doing much better than 99% of the population. Someday I'm going to come up to Flowshala and we're going to film like a 50-hour fight rewilding program. We just obviously can't do it right now.
I think we're going to train for 50 hours straight.
You're gonna
Okay, I have a fun screen share. So I'm going to show you just a little screen share. Don't mind my millions of tabs. Here it goes. Screen share. All right, we're going to make it big. This is from the workshop. So I just want you to just observe as an exercise. Let's say you have some stacks and you want to learn this stuff. You want to start playing around and getting outside and just getting into this hyper focus. It's actually really, really fun and just kind of different. So here it is.
Oh, I'm wearing the net.
There's Adrian. There's the dog. Woo. Don't mind all the words. This is like a promo thing, but I just want to show you this.
But yes, I did give 100 people brand new machetes and teach them all in one giant group to not get hit in what, an hour and a half?
I think you did one with a bamboo stick and then you added the machete the next day.
Yeah.
I remember seeing people transition from like looking super awkward. Okay, I'm gonna get out of that big screen. Looking super awkward in the very beginning, and just in 2 hours of training with the bamboo staff, just completely transforming their awareness and their presence, and just like embodying that sort of warrior archetype. And I really think that that's what we need right now. Is we need to feel rewilded. We need to feel like connected again. And we're totally taken out of our natural state. And so if this is like one tiny little thing that we can do to just start feeling alive again, great, awesome. Get a stick, start whacking your partner with it. Maybe not whack.
People tend to be so nervous and afraid, I think, of everything because their brain knows that they can't handle basic things, basic tasks. Basic tasks for me include, picking things up, swinging objects, and then weapons. I think weapons are like a fundamental thing that define us as humans and that we should know how to use or at least be comfortable using. You don't have to be a sword master of like 13th century German longsword at all, but you do have to have the ability to pick up basic things and use them in an offensive and a defensive way without people choreographing it for you. You need to be able to translate what somebody's body position is as things come at you, figure out how to stop it, and then figure out how to respond. That is the basis of flow state. I think the basis of all flow state originally comes from fighting and from violence. So there are other people who do it different ways. They do it with swinging fire or hula hooping or all these other things. But I'm that guy who like wants everybody to have a machete in every room of their house and in their car and just learn to use it as a basic human tool.
Cool. And what do you got behind you there, Mark?
Giant wall. There's, let's see here, machetes, bows, atlatls. There's a katana there just for fun. Over there's a bunch of machetes. Yeah, this place is riddled. There's probably 50 machetes in here. 5 or 6 bows, quivers up here probably. Can't really see it in that angle. Handmade arrows, handmade bows, handmade strings. And if we look at the other wall over there, can we see it? We would see maces, staffs, swords, bows, axes. There's a bag of tomahawks over there. They never go bad, and everybody should have stuff like that, I think. I think the fundamental aspects of, you have to go back to, what's the pyramid of self-actualization, Summer, from psychology? The things you have at the bottom: food, shelter, water.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Everybody tries to skip the bottom of that pyramid. And for me, rewilding is the bottom of that pyramid. You have to know how to create food, shelter, gather water, identify plants, hunt, process food, make your own clothes. And safety is the thing that everybody tries to leave out, which is the learning to use simple, inexpensive agricultural implements as tools or weapons.
I started sleeping with a mace close to my bed because I moved from being in a community where I live in the woods in my tiny home to now living in the city, and I hear all these sounds all the time, and I'm like a woman by myself with my son, and I feel really grateful that I know how to swing a mace, because I know obviously it's not like a gun or whatever, but I feel like I can protect myself pretty well with being able to like do an uppercut or like, you know, protect myself with a metal object.
Okay. Learn to block, then learn to hit back. And it's like, it's as simple as that. Most people want to make martial arts very, very complex, but then they're trying to make things too complicated. I think that's something that we have to avoid in the concept of flow state and in the concept of rewilding, is avoid making things too complex, isolate things down to base principles, have a series of base principles, and then figure out how to implement those principles. And then they could look different for everybody, but the base principles are all the same. So your base principles for like outdoor living or rewilding are, you know, like what? Cutting tools, combustion, containers, cordage, and what am I missing? Cover? Anybody else know that? 5 C's? Who's that much of a nerd?
Is this from your wildlife training, or where is this? Where are you pulling these 5 C's?
This is an idea from a guy named Dave Canterbury, who runs a company called Self-Reliance Outfitters. And there are 5 things that every civilization in history is based on. And whether it's the ancient Egyptians or modern America, there are 5 things that society absolutely has to have in order to be society. And if those 5 things aren't there, then society and civilization cannot possibly exist. So whether it's Native Americans or ancient Egyptians or ancient Peruvians, they all have these 5 things. And every time you go to a museum, you will see those 5 things represented in every culture that's in that museum.
So tell me one more time the 5 C's so I can write them in our chat bar.
So cutting tools, right? So one of my favorite things is the British Museum in London. And you go in there and they have some of the most elaborate flint cutting tools that you've ever seen. They look like they've been formed out of glass, but they were chipped handmade, right? So cutting tools is number 1. Combustion is sources is number 2. The ability to create fire and heat is a fundamental aspect of society that everybody should master in at least 3 ways, because you shouldn't be limited to one thing. You should know how to make fire with modern tools. You should know how to make fire with absolutely nothing. And, you know, so those are those things that you need to know. So we had cutting tools, combustion sources, containers. Containers are a fundamental thing of society. Right here, Angela has a big bottle in her hand right now, right? Containers are fundamental to society for the creation of storing food, moving food around, and just storing objects of any type. Cordage, which is rope or bindings, ways to put things together and hold them together. So if you're a nerd like me, you've ever put up a TP, what do you have to have at the top? Cordage holds all your staffs together so that you can hold things together. Cordage on your shirts, everything, tying your shoes, cordage, right? So now we have cutting tools, combustion sources, containers, cordage, and the last one is cover, which is the creation of clothing and or buildings. So we kind of cover all the aspects, the basic aspects of society in that idea there of those 5 C's. And whether it's Summer building her own tiny house in the forest or learning to build lean-tos, having a fundamental understanding of those things brings us back closer to nature and back to building things with our own hands.
Cool.
Was that the nerdiest explanation you've ever heard?
I felt like it was pretty straightforward, and I feel like we have a lot of spare time on our hands, so this might be a time to kind of brush up on some of those skills because the future's a little unknown, and it's important to be able to make sure we have those survival skills down.
Yeah. So you have those 5 things, those 5 elements that have to be there in your wilding experience. You have to learn how to use all of those 5 things effectively, and the further back you go until you're making stone tools. And having all of those abilities is, I think, a good thing for the human brain. I think many people are so agitated because their brain knows that they don't really have all the information that they need, and especially in times of crisis like this, their brain starts to freak out. I think that's what the whole toilet paper thing was. People didn't know what to do, so they just latched onto one thing and they ran crazy with it. Instead of being like, wow, that's a dumb thing that's totally not necessary for for moving along in life or for health or for fitness in any way, they latched onto one thing because they had no other frame of reference in order to organize their thoughts around in a time of crisis.
That is that is definitely an interesting speculation there. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to some other key terms that I wanted to share and also have your insight on, Mark. So there's a term called neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to change continuously throughout an individual's life. Brain activity associated with a given function can be transferred to a different location, i.e. the gray matter can change and synapses may strengthen or weaken over time. So a lot of folks think that their brain, when they hit their mid-20s, early 20s, is like, it's just done, that's what you got, you're good to go. But we explore this concept of neuroplasticity and also training neural load in order to actually optimize our brain so that we can make really, really complex and important decisions really, really quickly. So Mark, can you tell us a bit about your work with helping adults? Like, just maybe give us some examples or some anecdotal evidence about some of your clients, like people that start with very, very little knowledge on how to train neuroplasticity or neural load, and then how you can accelerate that learning environment quickly.
So neuroplasticity, right, is your ability to form new neural connections to learn new things. And most people kind of abandon that as they get older. And the thing that I focus on the most, you can focus on that physically, you can focus on that mentally, right? So mentally would be like learning new languages or wandering down a street you've never been down before. Physically, it's learning new skills constantly over time or mastering a skill in a new way. So as Jason has been watching my videos, more complex kettlebell movement over time, you have 6 basic things, but then those 6 basic things become an infinite number of things. And learning to put things together in a new way is both neuroplasticity, forcing yourself to be creative and find new ways to do things, and neural load. So I think neuroplasticity is one side of this coin and neural load is the other side of the coin. Like neuroplasticity would be your ability to learn a new language. Neural load would be going to another country for a year that learns that language and hammering the shit out of those neural connections until you can't possibly forget them, right? So neural load is that one side, your brain's ability to take on new aspects or to shove things around inside the brain to create new things. Neural load is hammering something so hard that you can't possibly forget it. Does that make sense?
Thumbs up if that makes sense.
Good. So
feel free to put questions, guys, as they're coming up. Put them in the chat bar and we'll address them, because this is a discussion and it's just nice to be able to hear from you guys too, so that you don't get bored or disengage. We want to keep the flow state going. So one thing that Mark was mentioning, we've talked a couple of times just to kind of key in on what we want to share in this. And I was asking him about why it's important to focus on the basics. So here at the Flowshala, I train a lot of everyday humans to master these tools. They come into the studio, have never even touched a mace, and pretty soon, 3 months later, they're looking like they came out of the womb swinging that thing. So the reason why they get so good at it so quickly is because we spend a lot of time on the basics. And when you get into the nuance of the basics, you can really, really dial in the flow state brainwave state, because you're able to master the most simple version of it, and then you start to add the layers of complexity. So you said something that really stuck with me, where you said turn the basics into a form of meditation in daily practice. And I know you're kind of this badass fighter guy. We're talking about violence and fighting and things, but turning the basics into a form of meditation in daily practice. Do you want to expand on that idea a bit?
So I've been doing complex physical things for years, kettlebells, clubs, maces, and absolutely every day that I start doing them, I do 10 minutes of just absolute basics every time I do them. So what I've been doing during quarantine here is an hour of Mace every day. The first 10 to 15 minutes of that are just the pure basics. And you'll find that the basics change over time. They don't change, but they change inside your brain, or they change the way that your hand moves, or they change the way that your grip functions, or they change what part of the sensation you're doing. So the focus on the basics, everybody wants to try and skip the basics and get to the really cool stuff. And I just force people to do the basics over and over and over again in a progressive way. They never do the same thing twice, but they still focus on the absolute most fundamental aspects over and over and over again. And I think that that's how you get to mastery. The older I get and the more I do, the less complex most of my stuff gets. Amina down there in the corner knows this, world champion Kung Fu person. And when she comes to me, what does she do? Front kick block, front kick block, knee front kick block, knee block, front kick. We take all the basic things and we hammer through a giant mathematical progression of every possible combination of 7 or 8 things, and we go through it, and there's nothing else there. It's only 7 things, but it's pushing a mastery of those 7 things and just doing the basics over and over and over again, because she's a world champion. She's a super badass. Her level of complexity of movement is way above mine, but focusing on the basics is something that you just can't escape from.
Yeah, and the mechanism behind that, so it's phasing off the prefrontal cortex so you can get out of your own way, getting out of fight or flight, so that you can actually tap into higher functioning centers of your brain, your imagination network, your salient network, motivation. When you can light up all those babies all at once, then you're in a flow state. So whatever the thing that puts you into flow state is, whether it's art, whether it's, what are the things that make you feel human, and how can you spend more time off the device? Because the device is going to put you in beta brainwave state and trigger the amygdala to trigger the stress response. So find the things that you do in your life that make you more human and do them. and carve out time and be disciplined about it as if it is your workout. Like that is your workout. That is your practice now, is like carving out that hour in the morning and that hour at night where you can actually feel human and not feel like a caged animal.
Yes. And so much of the stuff that I like to do is like on my YouTube channel right now, I don't do a lot of stuff about programming. I'm just putting out a bunch of like, this is the good coaching of a movement, and let people work through that right now, because I think that that's something that's really good for people. Watch a video, go try it, watch a video, go try it, watch a video, go try it. It goes back to my oldest theory on training, which is practice theory, practice theory, practice theory. Go back and forth on those two things forever, and eventually you'll be telling me what I'm doing wrong, which is really the goal of all of this, is for people to get to the point where they understand something so much that they become their own master, which is kind of a fun way of thinking about it. Cool. But forcing people to think is something that's not normally a part of training at all. Normally people want to remove the thought process from training almost entirely if they can. But I think that we have to force people back into the thinking portion of training, very much so. Cool.
Well, on that note, I would love to share a bit of my experience with facilitating adult education in a non-conventional setting. So you all might know about an event that I facilitated the past 2 years called Flow State Summit. And my whole goal with that event, I curated it to give people the opportunity to skill share outdoors. Because I taught seminars for about 7 years prior to that, and we sat in windowless rooms sometimes, you know, for 16 hours, 2 8-hour days, sometimes 32 hours learning, and people's eyes glazed over, and they were, you know, they're checked out. They were there physically, but they weren't there mentally and emotionally, and not able to absorb the information as well. And so I had this harebrained idea, what if we did a skill share and we brought all of our really awesome coaches that know all this cool stuff, all these skills like and Mace, and we brought all these experts to the quarry, and I'm gonna do a little screen share and we're gonna just observe that, and I'm gonna tell you what I learned, because I'm all about doing a thing and then gathering data and then making it better the next time. So we're going back to screen share land. Grab your lemon juice, lemon water. Golly, here we go. Let me slide you guys over here. And we're gonna start at the beginning. So here's the whole experiment. Sorry if it's a little loud. And I'll just kind of talk about, so we had a Wim Hof expert, Ben came in and taught us how to Wim Hof. If you're not Wim Hofing, that's definitely something to put on your rewilding list. Art, performance. Are you doing anything creative? Talk a little about fighting, maybe exercising outdoors. These are all examples, feel free to take notes. Get your tools outside, find a place that's safe. So our friend Leo from Texas came in and taught us about Mace. This was 2 years ago. You can't be in community, find other ways to facilitate community. So maybe you're having little events, or you're gathering your friends and you're doing community-oriented things that you would do in person. We've had a couple of events where we had like music and different people come in and share within our smaller communities. Master a new skill. Maybe you want to work on fire arts. Maybe you want to play fire. Maybe not. Maybe that's too much. But I'm very curious about fire arts. So these are some circus performers from New Orleans that came in and presented. And I'll kind of recap what the gatherings were, the findings after facilitating this event that included all of this stuff.
Yeah, that Lyra move that girl pulled was pretty tight.
Oh yeah, side note, Mark also coaches people in aerial, in addition to fighting. Just people to be sexy on silks. I miss my home so much right now. It's been really hard being displaced from my backyard.
Oh, I'm just jealous of all those green trees out there right now.
No, it's been gorgeous. It looks like it's July right now.
Yeah. It's raining here in LA, but it's still just not that level of green.
Elevate, connect, rewild. Oh my gosh, I did not plan that. The rewild is in there. Cool. So that's that. So taking the learning outside did several things for, hi Zach, nice to see you. It did several things for us. So it created and fostered a sense of community that wasn't present when we were learning indoors in windowless rooms. We shared a morning meal together. So maybe there's some things that you can do in the next month or two where you're able to share a meal with a group of friends, where you guys have a designated time once a month that you can you can be in a safe setting where you're facilitating meals with people that you wouldn't normally get to spend time with. We are free to come and go as we pleased. We had more oxygen to the brain and greater focus because we're outdoors and outside of walls. We had a memorable experience that integrated all the senses, so visual, auditory, kinesthetic, touch, smell, temperature, human connection, and skill sharing. And there was an element of artistry involved that evoked a deep emotion. People weren't expecting the circus piece of it, and I think art is a really important element of being a human and being able to experience art or make art or be able to create and find your own artistic outlet. So that's my 2 cents. Does anybody have questions on any of that about the Flow State Summit facilitation or bringing your learning outside? Did anyone take any ideas away from this talk so far about how they can rewild? All right, we're gonna go into gallery view now. So we have about less than 15 minutes, and I want to share some recipes for you guys too before we close. But what's coming up for you guys? Let's just everyone kind of unmute your microphone. What are you taking away? What's landing? It could be about the actual stuff we're talking about. It could be metaphorically related to other existential things. Let's share. This is a discussion. Just raise your hand and we'll pin you and you can just talk. Sienna. Oh, Sienna, got to unmute yourself. Everyone, unmute yourself. What's landing? What's not landing? What do you need more clarity on?
What keeps landing for me is I'm about ready to go out into the forest for the next rest of quarantine out in Montana. And it's inspiring me to just like get into those basics and grab some sticks and just run around. And I definitely have the opportunity to rewild myself. So I'm kind of actually looking forward to it quite a bit.
Sienna, do you know anything about those 5 things? Do you know anything about like creating fires in the forest or creating shelter or any of that?
Well, I've made some forts in my life, and I also got a bunch of bonfires to build. And yeah, so I mean, I grew up in the forest, so it's kind of like it's been 25 years since I'm able to like kind of really ground in. So the next month and a half will be this is a nice reminder of what those things are. So yeah. Thank you.
So work on those 5 things. Just like wake up and make a fire every morning. It's kind of like what I like to tell people to do, and then start taking things away from your ability to make fire and start figuring out how to find a natural equivalent to it. So it's like, eventually you're going to have to get rid of the lighter, and eventually you're going to get all the way back down to sticks.
Yeah, cool. I might get like some microscopes and wait for the sun to hit it.
Yeah. Small pieces of glass, glass magnifying glasses. I have them in all of my backpacks. When I travel around the world, I always have 3 ways to start fire. Bic lighter, easiest thing in the world, ferro rod, and magnifying glass.
I've got a whole stash of them, including magnifying glass.
Nice. Cool. What else is landing for you guys? What are you taking away from this? What are you stoked to take action on?
Somebody talk or you're going to get elected.
I love that Sienna's just painting there casually. Jason, what about you? What'd you take away from this, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I just joined to try to learn a little bit more. So it was just interesting to hear a little bit about the flow state, and not just the flow state, but then, you know, all the things you've been talking about, because I didn't know what to expect from this. This was just kind of like, I've got time this afternoon, need to learn some new things. So,
well, hopefully you came up with some ideas on some nerd stuff. And feel free to send me ideas for videos anytime. I need to know what other people want to know because I can be as nerdy as possible, but I'm trying to limit my nerddom down to like digestible amounts of information because I can get super way over nerdy on all of this if I'm left on my own devices.
Be careful what you ask for, but yeah, no problem. Be happy to.
Sure. Thanks.
Rashawn, I'm curious for you, what did you take away from this little talk?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, mostly it was just nice to get the reminder to practice the basics every day. Don't leave the basics behind. And I'm lucky enough to live on 20 acres in the woods at the moment, so I've been doing lots of running through the woods and harvesting nettles and mushrooms.
He's killing it.
Cool.
Next up, buddy, deerskin leggings. Go for it. Project idea.
Yeah, I need to get me a machete.
Definitely need a machete, but yeah, it looks like you're in a forested area that you have snow out there?
No, just lots of sunshine at the moment.
Okay. Well, machete and definitely get yourself like a condor knife and tool rifleman's tomahawk. That would be the jam.
I'm on it.
Yeah.
Alicia, you want to unmute yourself and say hey? Because I know you're pretty stoked about coming to this. What'd you take away, girl?
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry. I was driving. I was sitting in a park. I was just about to leave, so I'll repark real quick. I don't know. Honestly, the whole idea about the neuroplasticity thing is always been the thing that I've been interested in and why I like the movement and the Mace. And I've already actually taken my workout outside a couple of times. I really actually love that. But it's kind of inspiring me because I made a fire the other day and just was burning brush around, and it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of going along with this conversation, and it's really cool. And it's kind of making me want to go back home and start a fire and take my Mace outside and just put some music on and find some flow.
Hey. Yeah, it's so interesting how the fire piece is like a big takeaway, Mark. We thought we were talking about Mace, but the fire. Because you feel most human when you're just staring at a fire.
There's also nothing more humbling than somebody taking away all of your tools from you and telling you to start a fire. and you spending the next 6 hours trying to figure out how to start a fire in whatever environment you're in. Like that's humbling.
I'm gonna start with a lighter, but
start with a lighter, but then it's like, no, making fire starters, gathering all of the correct ingredients in order to create a fire of different sizes, shapes, and humidities and thicknesses and all this other stuff, and like having all of your stuff arranged. Like, I really think that like tracking and creating fire are kind of the origins of human thought and planning, which is that thing that separates us from, everything else. So I think that it's interesting to like force people to go back to focus on that, because people completely panic and freak out.
And we just want to focus on devices because like we're so trained to like go to that for stimulation, but there's so many other skills that we could be working on right now, and just taking all this extra time to just really dial in these really necessary life skills and feel better about ourselves and our environment while doing it.
Yeah.
Dana and Angela.
I'm just kind of struck by the dichotomy, or I guess dichotomy would be the right word, but like with everyone going inside and so many people working from home, and we're just in such like a digital time. And I've always been pretty technologically inept, it feels like, and so I've really been making an effort to sort of have like more of an online presence, start a website, get more efficient during the time that I am using the computer. Then also kind of comparing that to what we're talking about now, is like finding the times that like really make you human and latching onto those. So sort of just kind of like two courses in my brain of like, how can I be in this like technological world, but also be like completely present in my physical form.
Oh,
Here's something that I think is really fun. We're all trapped inside, but we get to go outside for, our daily walk or whatever. Taking a different path every day and trying to get further away from your house, and making sure that if you walk past a road that you've never been down or an alley that you've never been down, go down it. Even if it's just you're walking to the CVS or something and there's an alley right there and you're like, I have never walked down that alley. Go walk down that alley.
You'll see things you never imagined.
You're just exploring your environment, which is once again one of those basic things that humans are supposed to do and that neuroplasticity is for. And when the world is functioning at our normal rate of speed, we cease to look for alternative paths. We look for the path that we know will get us there in the correct amount of time. But right now we have the time, so go wander around as much as possible. Walk a different grid pattern every day. Find a different alley, go a different direction every day.
Awesome. Kim raised her hand. Kim, what did you take away?
Is actually to build on that quite a bit. My kids and I walk every day in our dog because that's what we get to do. And the other day, my kids are 3 and 5, and every time they see a tree, they climb it. And so I finally climbed a tree the other day for the first time in like 30 years. It wasn't pretty, and I think I kind of embarrassed the kids, but it was really fun and different. And as far to build on the technology world, because I'm in a weird suddenly I'm an essential worker, which I didn't expect to be, but I am working from home. I've been finding that the things that I've been doing that involves technology is actually learning guitar, and I signed up for free Fender.com. They have a 3-month trial lessons, which is pretty cool. And we're also practicing some of our Spanish skills, which is also not pretty. And luckily there aren't any other witnesses, but yeah, so that's kind of how I've been trying to take advantage of the situation.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Kim. Cool. Well, we're almost up on time. If anybody else wants to share what they took away, they can put it in the chat bar. And lastly, I have 2 recipes for you. I'm going to teach you how to make bone broth. If you've never made bone broth and you want to learn how, super easy. Get yourself a pressure cooker. It's all written down here. You're going to take your 2 bones, put them in the water, and you put apple cider vinegar in there. You can also broil them before you do that. And then it draws out the marrow, draws out the collagen. You can add chopped onions, chopped garlic, and salt to taste, and chopped ginger. And it's super good and just a nice way to have something healthy instead of going to more coffee or more sugar, more caffeine during the day, to have something that's going to be good for your brain and good for your joints. I also shared my recipe for brain health coffee, which is real simple. It's kind of like bulletproof coffee. And it's a tablespoon of butter, a scoop of collagen powder, 1 tablespoon of MCT oil, and an optional dash of cinnamon. Blend that up. Good way to start your day. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. It's been awesome having you. Namaste. We'll see you next time. Get in touch if you guys have any questions, and I'll follow up with an email with that information. Have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Guys.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Mark, you can just hang out here for just a sec.
All right.
Recording. Yeah.